Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Well, that's interesting. Don't know how that happened, but hey. Hey, y'all. Happy Sunday. Wow, there's been some changes to this interface. and I'm not 100% up, it looks like. So that's never happened before, but oh well. Uh, Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's doing all right. And yeah, we didn't have a show last week. We were out of town, and things are settling down and everything. So I didn't have a video today. I'm going to try to have one up next Sunday. Fingers crossed, knock on or touch wood, whichever you prefer. So today is an open Q&A. I do have a topic I do want to talk about. I've gotten a couple of emails about this topic in the past, and I recently had one. Oh, it was earlier this week. But we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes. But first, I want to give a shout out and say hello to and say thank you to my friend Steve over at Harneal Media. He's out in the chat with you all right now. I consider him a friend and a good one at that. If you're even toying with the idea of a website, a web store, um, to offer your products or your services, or even just set up a gallery of your work, kind of an online resume of the kind of things that you do. There's no better way to do it than with your own personal website, and Harneal Media is the only place I will ever recommend for several reasons. Number one, he's very competitively priced. You wonder how he gets away with doing it so cheaply, given everything he does, especially. Number two, it's 100% personalized service. Said it before and I'll say it again. When you're working with Harneal Media, you're working with Steve, not some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere. It's 100% you and Steve working together. Um, I can't sing his praises high enough. You'll find a link to Harneal Media in every video and every live stream on this channel, and it's that way for a reason. He really is that good. So do yourself a favor, take advantage of the opportunity. Go to harnealmedia.com, click that contact us link, and shoot him a message. He'll work with you, and you'll see how easy this can be. Um, Thank you, Steve, for everything that you do. I truly appreciate you more than you'll ever know. BarnealMedia.com, sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC.com. Okay, I'm going to get into a rather basic concept here simply because I get a lot of email messages asking about this, and I see a lot of posts in some of the Facebook CNC groups that I frequent. Not as often as I'd like, but I do see these comments. And that is, a person has made their design, they've saved the G code, go out to the machine, they get everything set up. And in this particular case, the most recent email I got, he sets his XY Z0, runs the G code, and the bit starts about a half inch above the material. And it works all the way through the G code. And on the very final pass, it'll just start touching the material, then finish and go back to the home position. What's going on? Well, in this case, the bit moved over to about a half inch above the material. And as it turns out, he's using half-inch thick material. And that set it off. That set off my radar. Here's what's happening. Let me go into VCarve Pro and we'll see what's going on here. And this has to do with the initial setup of the file. Now, when we get into job setup, obviously we select the job type, the job size, and it's right here, your Z0 position. you need to make sure that you're setting your Z0 position here the same way you're going to set your Z0 outside on the machine. Now, what this email told me was that he had his Z0 position set to the machine bed. And the way I can tell that is because after setting his Z0 to the material surface, the bit went up about a ½ inch above his ½ inch thick material and just air cut until it got to that last pass. Then it finally just started touching the material. If you set your Z0 position to the machine bed in the software, then you set your Z0 on the material, the bit is going to cut, it's going to air cut, it's going to cut above because it thinks that material surface is your machine bed. So it's crucial that you get this setting right in this software based on where you're actually going to set your Z0 on the machine. If you do it the other way around and set to the material surface, and then when you get outside, you set your Z0 on your machine, several things could happen. Depending upon your safe Z setting, and I'll get to that in just a minute, the bit could plunge down and then hit your material as it moves over and attempt to start cutting. That could break a bit. It could damage the material. It could crash your machine. It could cause a lot of damage. If your safe Z happens to be set high enough to where it clears the surface, now it's going to plunge all the way down into your material, the full depth, because it thinks your material surface is down here on your machine bed. So it's crucial that no matter which one of these you choose, and they both have their place, they're both very useful, and I do use both of them. It's crucial that you make this setting in the software the same as where you're going to set outside on the machine. Now, in this case, I have Z0 set to material surface. That's fine. So we'll go ahead and we'll click OK. Now, when we talk about Safe Z, Safe Z is the height at which your bit can rapid move with the tip of the bit up out of the material. It's safe for that bit to move rapidly. Now, that's not to be confused with home position. We'll get into that in just a second. But it is just what it sounds like. It's the height above the material where it's safe for that bit to move in a rapid setting without it cutting. So where do we set that? We'll come over here into the Toolpath tab, and it's in Material Setup. Now you can see right here, it says Home Position X0, Y0, Z.3. That's the home position. We'll click on the Set button, and what we're looking at is right down here. Okay? Rapid Z gaps above material. Z1 clearance is 0.2. This is the safe Z. What this is saying is that when the bit is cutting, finishes its cut, it's going to lift up 0.2 inches above the surface of the material before it makes a rapid move over to start cutting again. That is safe Z. Now, in my example a minute ago, Um, I have 3/4 inch material over here in my job setup, and we can see that. Here's my material thickness right here. My safe Z is 0.2. If I make a mistake and set my Z0 to the machine bed when my Z0 is supposed to be set to the material surface, it thinks this surface here is my machine bed. So now when I hit cycle start, it's going to start moving. And this is where you get broken bits because it's not lifting up higher than my material surface. So it's going to crash. So it's important that it all comes back down to where you're setting your Z0. If you set it to the material surface here in the file, make sure you set it to the material surface outside on the machine. If you set it to the machine bed in the file, make sure you set it to the machine bed on the machine. So in this case, he was lucky in that I think he had it set to machine bed here in the file, but when he got outside, he set it to the material surface. It happens. I've done it. I use both. Usually when I'm cutting all the way through a piece of material, I set to the machine bed. If I'm drilling holes or doing a profile cutout, if the hole's going all the way through, that is, I'll set it to the machine bed. If I'm V-carving, if I'm 3D carving or something like that, I set it to the surface of the material. So they have their own place, but there have been times where I have forgotten or just not paid attention. Let me get out of here and go back over. I've just not paid attention and I had it set to machine bed and I didn't mean to. I just didn't pay attention. I cruised on past it, clicked OK. Then when I got outside, that's what happens to me. I set it to the material surface and it's air cutting up above the material. Then I have to, oh my God. And I come back and I look and sure enough, it's set to machine bed, set it to material surface, then okay, I'm fine. So that's what's going on. If your bit comes over and just air cuts about the same as the thickness of your material, check in job setup to make sure you have your Z0 position correct. Okay. Now, we have a question here by Sam Spade. If a clamp is higher than safe Z, but shorter than home, when the job is finished, will it clear the clamp? No, probably not. What's going to happen, and let's go back over here real quick. Now I'll get into the home start position. The home start position is where your toolpath is going to start from. Most commonly, it's X0, Y0. Almost always, that's where your bit is going to start. In my case, the bottom left corner. When I first hit cycle start and it starts moving to make that first cut, the first thing that's going to happen is no matter where that Z is sitting, it's going to drop down so that the tip of that bit is 0.3 above the material. Then it's going to move over to the first cut. And as it does, it's going to drop down to this point too. Okay. Now, from here, it'll make its first cut, lift up out of the material 0.2 inches, then move over to make its next cut, lift up out of the material 0.2 inches, then it's going to start coming back to the home position. This is the start and the home position. It's going to come back over here to this point, and while it's moving, it's going to lift up to that home height. If you have a clamp somewhere in here in your way, it could very well hit that clamp. Even if you have a home position way up, say 1.3, because it's going to depend on where that last cut is. If that last cut is right here, it's not going to have time to raise up. Your best bet is to kind of look at your tool path and figure out where that last cut's going to be and where it's going to go when it goes to return to the home position. This is why a lot of people like to use the center as their XY position here, their XY datum position, because it's very rare you're going to have a clamp here somewhere. There are occasions I'll have, like if I'm doing a clock, I may drill out this hole and then fasten down with a washer and a screw in the center. But it's very rare. So, but look at your tool paths and see where the cuts, which direction the cut's going and where it's going to go, and place your clamps accordingly. Having said that, there are also various different types of clamps. You can, use edge clamps that have almost like teeth on them that will hold from the edges that don't actually sit on top of the material. Or you can make your own wooden clamps or clamps out of HDPE or even aluminum. Most of these bits will cut through aluminum. Ask anybody who's gone through a clamp, they'll tell you. This gets into fixturing and workpiece mounting and work holding, and that's almost a science of its own. Now, Martin says that was the reason for introducing the keep out zones, and that is true. However, there is, I don't know if it's being addressed in 12.5, but it has been demonstrated by a couple of folks that when the tool path is finished running and the bit starts moving back for home position, it doesn't take those keep out zones into account. It'll go right through a clamp. There's a gentleman by the name of Milo Scott. He has a YouTube channel. He doesn't post there very often. I will look for his channel. And he has a couple of videos up that demonstrates this because he tested it. And it doesn't respect those keep out zones. It just goes straight back to the home position and goes, whoosh, you know. So that is something to watch out for. That's why I don't like clamps. I don't use clamps. If painter's tape and CA glue won't hold it down, I screw it down from the corners. But that doesn't always work. Now let's see here. Ed Appleton is asking, does the setting on the CAM side override the settings on the CAD side for that specific tool path? If you set up something over here, let me get out of this. If you set up something over here in job setup, and then come over here and make changes, like you discover your material is only 0.7 thick and you want to use the center for your XY datum position, this will override what you set up in the job setup over here. Yes. But other than that, no. Oh, can't see it. I wasn't sharing. Duh. Thank you, Dwayne. Thanks for keeping me honest. I appreciate that. Well, as I was saying, if you make a setting, okay, let me close this, cancel. Come on, Mark, you can do this. There we go. If you set things up over here, draw out your design, then come over here and get into material setup, then realize your material is 0.7 thick instead of 0.75, and you've decided you want to change to the center instead of the lower left corner, then yes, these settings will override job setup once you click OK. But those are the only settings over here that are going to override really what you did in job setup. So, yes, these settings will change and override this. Your home start position is, generally speaking, a set it and forget it kind of a thing. Not always. I have toyed with the Z gap above the material because it's a trade-off. I think the software comes from the factory with this set at 0.8, which is fine. It just means that that bit has to drop a little further down when it starts heading over to make its first cut. It's no big deal. I don't remember why I changed it to 0.3. I think I was trying to do something pretty tall and I didn't have the Z range that I needed on the old Gatton CNC, but I don't remember. These can change depending upon your on your project and your material. Z1 is your safe Z height, and again, that's where it is safe for that bit to move at the rapid rate to progress on to the next cut. The plunge Z2 is at what distance from the surface of the material should your Z slow down to the feed rate for that bit. If you have your bit, you've just done something, you've moved your spindle or router out of the way to check a piece of material. Now you bring it back and it's 2 inches above your material surface. And you click cycle start, it's going to come down. The Z is going to plunge down at the rapid rate, in this case, until it gets 0.2 above the material surface. Then it's going to slow down to whatever plunge rate you have set up for whatever particular bit you're using. We'll just pull up a bit. In this case, a 1/4 inch end mill, plunge rate is 60 inches per minute. Well, the Z rapid rate on my machine, I think it's 180 inches per minute, maybe 200. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember. It's going to come down at that 180 to 200 inches per minute until it gets 0.2 above the surface of the material. Then it's going to slow down to this plunge rate so it doesn't crash into the material surface. So that's what these two settings are. Your safe Z height and your safe Z plunge. And this is where you change them in material setup. Now, if you have, for instance, a lot of holes to drill, you want to drill for some reason. Okay, here's a perfect example. You're doing a cribbage board. You got a bunch of 1/8 inch holes to drill. Does it make sense for your bit to come up 0.2 inches out of that hole before moving over to the next one and then plunging down? You might take that down to 1/8 of an inch. You might take it down to a little bit more, to a little bit lower than that. Because if you've got 100 and some odd holes to drill in that cribbage board, it doesn't need to come way up out of the material before moving over to to drill the next hole. But by the same token, if you're making a clock face and your bit may be going all over that piece of material, you might want it to come up a little bit higher. Or if you've got carvings in the center, or you've got other things in your way, you might want that bit to come up high. So this can change depending upon the project. But generally speaking, the plunge doesn't. So, but that's entirely up to you. You can change it to where the bed is just barely clearing the material as it comes out, or you can make it come up a 1/2 inch. What would that be? 12, 13 millimeters, something like that. That's entirely up to you. So, all right, let's see what we've got here on other questions. Okay, Rich Bratcher says, this will be a long explanation of my question, so it will cover more than one comment. Noted. I have 1.5 inch thick material. My 3D model height is 0.89 thick. I tried to make my base thickness 0.35 by adding material below the model. Zeroed on material surface. When I carved, I ended up with only about 0.030 material thickness. Every cutter change was zeroed the same. Cutter did not slip, so I'm confused. Okay, you ended up with 0.35. You wanted 0.35 and you ended up with 0.3. Okay. I would have to see that file, Rich. 0.89 and plus 0.35. Let me cheat and whip out the old calculator here, but you should be good. 0.89 plus 0.35. Well, that equals up to 1.24, not quite 1 1/4. Wow, this is a head scratcher. I would have to see that file to see what's going on. But another thing you can take advantage of here in your material setup is where your model is placed in the material, as well as your total model thickness. Okay. Let me switch back over here to live. Sorry, Mark, I already deleted the model. Okay, well, Rich is a channel member, as you can tell by that little icon next to his name. We're going to be doing some 3D work tomorrow, Rich. I'll try to get into it and see if I can duplicate what you were talking about. So during the members only live stream, we can get a little bit deeper into this. But basically put, what you can do when you import a model is you're looking at where that model is actually going to be placed within your material. And that is something that a lot of people don't know, A, don't know exists, or B, forget to check. You can also, right now I've got a model thickness of 0 because there's no model out here. But you can come in and click set and then change the overall height of that model, shape height plus base height, everything, and get it exactly perfect the way you want it. Then place that model within your material. Do you want it to start up here at the surface? Do you want it down here at the bottom so it's going to carve away all of this and leave just your model? Or do you want it somewhere in the center? And by double clicking that line in the center, it just centered my slider. Double clicking the bottom, set it down there. Double clicking the top, right there. Something I do all the time when positioning my models, I almost always set a gap at the top of 0.01. That puts that little bitty, I can't make this bigger. That puts a little bitty surface right here. When I put that little bit of a surface right there, it's got to carve through everything, the entire surface, to get down to where the model actually starts. Without doing that, if you have it set right up here, doesn't always happen, but you have the potential for flat spots on the top surface of your model. It doesn't always happen, but it can happen. As smooth as we like to think it is and as smooth as we want to make it, wood is an uneven surface. So by putting that small gap, 0.01 on top, it's going to carve through 0.01 of material before it gets to the top of your model, then carve the model down below. So that's why I do that. Little quickie, this is real easy. Where do I click to get rid of the grid background? Alrighty, let me come out of my Toolpaths tab just because I'm tired of it. It's right here. Toggle grid snapping on and off. If I click that and it turns blue, I have the grid. If I click it and it's invisible, grayed out, I no longer have the grid. It's just that simple. This icon right here. Grid is on, grid is off. Hope that helps you there, Bill. All right, Ed Appleton says, when you do an epoxy inlay, can you explain the thinking behind having a slightly lower than surface start depth? Does it have to do with final surfacing? It can. It's also has to do with the fact that, again, and I can go ahead and take that down. It also has to do with the fact that, again, no matter how well you surface it, wood isn't always it isn't always a perfectly flat surface. So there may be some undulations in there. Not only that, when you go to pour the epoxy, how level and flat did you get your piece of material when you poured that epoxy? So by having it go just a little bit, giving it a start depth of, 10 thousandths of an inch, you give yourself just a little bit more leeway when you go to surface that down without removing any detail. Because it's real easy to surface a piece of material then after you've done your epoxy inlay and you've got a bunch of fine detail in there, and then you start sanding to make it nice and smooth. It's real easy to start sanding through that detail. So the logic behind it is to basically bluff or trick the software into cutting slightly deeper to help avoid that. So, okay. Kimberly Went says, can you request a 0.125 grid without having to draw it? Yes. And here's where you set that. Again, we have our grid, toggle it on and off right there. But if we come over to the edit menu and we come down to options, I think it's in options. It might be in snap options. Let me make sure. Nope, it's going to be in snap options. It's going to be in snap options. I had a 50-50 shot and I picked the wrong one. So forget about that. Come up here to edit, snap options. Where it is, right there, snap to grid. We click, and here's your grid spacing right here. And for instance, you wanted 1/8 of an inch. So I'll click 125, click OK. And now my grid has a 1 inch or 1/8 of an inch grid pattern. Okay. Now I'll check the size. 375. Oh, I went way more than a grid square. That's why. I went way more than a grid. Snap options, snap to grid, grid spacing, 1/8 of an inch. Okay. So my grid spacing should be, why is that going 3/8 of an inch? Oh, because of my zoom out. That's why. I was zoomed way out. There's my grid spacing. It is proportional. I forgot about that. If you're zoomed way out here on a, what have I got here? I've got a 16 by 16 sheet, 1/8 of an inch. I'll click off so you can see. That's how big 1/8 of an inch grid is. So when you zoom in, you'll get your 1/8 of an inch grid. So that's what it was. I was zoomed way out. But it is proportional. You'll notice the grid doesn't move much when I zoom way out. And I wish I could make these dots a little darker so you could see, but I can't. So, yeah, F4 will also bring up the snap menu. You know, Martin, it's just me. I forget those F keys are even there. I mean, I know if I go to the edit menu, I can see there's the keyboard shortcut. But how often? I don't know. I'm just one of those guys. I don't very often use an F key. So, oh, okay. I see. Trying to create graph paper for a new backyard design. Yeah, no. Your best bet for that, I have found, is if you don't want to just go down and buy a tablet of graph paper, there are graph paper generators online. You tell it what kind of a graph you want, and it'll print it up, or it'll set it up for you. Okay, John Thumb, how do you add default G code to each project to run the spindle for 2 minutes for warm up? So when I use G code, it does it automatically. Okay, that is going to be pretty machine specific. There are ways you can do it. You have to edit your post processor, and that's way above what I can do It's way above what I can do right here live. Also, it's going to depend on which software you use, your controller software, I mean, whether you're using G-Sender, Mach 3, Mach 4, UCC, and C, whatever it is. Each one is going to have its own specific way of putting that into the post processor. But I would check with your machine manufacturer first, because there should be a a dwell setting for your spindle, and that's controlled by the controller software itself. It may also be controlled by your Spindle software if you have a I can't think of the word for it. I can't remember the word for it anyway. Converts three phase to single phase. VFD. I couldn't think of that word. Okay, if you have a Mazzo, what I would do, I would get a hold of Mazzo and ask them about that. That's pretty specific. Mazzo should have a way for you to program a spindle warm up. For instance, on my Avid CNC, uh, their manufacturer's instructions for my spindle. Now you can't see it, dust boots on the way. The manufacturer's instructions on my spindle is to do a 5-minute warm up cycle if the machine hasn't been run for 6 hours. And there is one button I push on the screen, click it, and it goes through the spindle warm up cycle. It'll run for 2.5 minutes at 12,000 RPM, then 2.5 minutes at 20,000 RPM, then shut down. And I do that if the machine hasn't been run for 6 hours. But once it's been run through that warm up cycle, I don't have to do it again. So having it at the beginning of every toolpath may not be what you want to do, but I would get with Mazzo and ask them if there is a way you can program a dwell, it's called, or a warm up cycle for your spindle. So, yes, you can do it manually if your Mazzo will let you um, do MDI, manual data entry. If you can manually put in commands, you can do, as John says, G4P5. We'll set a dwell time for 5 seconds. So, but I would get a hold of Mazzo and ask them. It may just be a simple setting, and it'll add that button to your controller top. So, okay, let's see here. And no, your post processor is not in the Mazzo. Your post processor is in the Vectric software. And go over here to save toolpath. You can select the post processor here. These are the post processors that you set up when you add your machine. So now Gary Meyer has a good point here, and it's something that I use in cold weather. Make a warm-up program to start the day. And basically what it is it's a program that'll run the machine for about 5 minutes. Doesn't have to be super technical. If you already have a piece of G code that took about 5 minutes to cut and used all of the axes, then that'll work. But when you're when you're working in cold weather, especially, you want to move the axes around to warm things up because things will, things contract in cold weather. And you want to free everything up. You want to get any grease or oil flowing and spreading evenly and what have you. And as Gary Meyer says, yes, full axis movement with spindle ramping speed. Yes, it can just go around in a square or a circle in X and Y with your Z going up and down. Just the 5-minute program with the spindle speed ramping up and then coming back down. Just create that program and run it. Personally, I have a piece of G code that takes about 6 minutes. I will run it in cold weather. And then because my software requires it, I'll do the spindle warm-up cycle. Then it's done. And I'm fine. Unless it's sat unmoved for another 6 hours, then I need to do the spindle warm-up cycle again. So, but yeah, it's not too bad. So, Carrie Casella says, I set up a macro in G-Sender for spindle warm-up. Yeah. I mean, everybody has their own way of doing it, and every manufacturer has their own way of doing it. But that's why I say check with the manufacturer, simply because they may already have a solution you're just not aware of. And I don't know why I still have this up. Okay. Drawing, let's say 2 squares. I make 1 square, then hit the escape key, then click the rectangle button again. Is there a way to stay in the tool then without reclocking the same roll twice? Reclocking the same roll twice. Oh, the same tool twice. No, it used to be that you could just tap the space bar and it would go into the last tool you used, but that's not the case anymore. Let's see, I'm trying to come back here. You don't have to leave that rectangle tool to make more than one. Just let me turn this off because that thing looks like I have chicken pox. Go into the rectangle tool and I draw my first rectangle. I can come over here and draw as many rectangles as I want. Okay. Now, if I need those rectangles to be a specific size, I've got one that's the one that I've just drawn. I want, let's say 3 by 2 and click apply. Now I have to close it to come along and resize this one, then go back into it and make this 3 by 2.5. Close. So there used to be a way to do it. You could just hit the space bar and go back into the last tool, but they took that out, not realizing how many people use it because the outcry was real and it was quick. I don't know if they're going to be changing that in 12.5. I really don't know. But basically put, if you come over here and you draw a line, you can just hit space to accept that line and then draw any other line, space, come down here, do that, space, and then here, do that, space. They're not connected. They're all separate vectors, but you don't have to leave the tool to create a new one. And join. Now it's one open vector. So, all right. I see some of our overseas people did make it in. Some of you didn't know that the US has switched over to daylight savings time overnight. Some of you were just getting here and I'm going, dang it, I missed it. Yeah, I'm sorry. So when for 12.5, your guess is as good as mine. They keep that information very tightly wrapped. There are still some things that are going on behind the scenes. Um, uh, some of their making, some entire completely not of their making. If you're a member of the forum and have been trying to access the forum and you are having problems accessing the forum for some reason, they have been having an issue with a DDoS attack, denial of service, and the forum has been slow. It's been unresponsive at times. They're aware of it. They're working on it, but they can only swat bots as fast as they can, and they're working on a solution. For some reason, there's been a denial of service attack on Vectric's forum. I don't know why. So I know they're working on that, but yeah, what can you say? There's some individuals out there. Let's just put it that way. So okay, let's see. I think that's all of the questions I see, unless I missed your question. If you asked a question and I didn't answer it, or I didn't give you a complete enough answer, please let me know. Let's see here. Okay. Martin says they would have known if they'd have been in the members chat. Yeah, we have a members only chat over on Facebook, and that was the major topic of discussion this morning was this daylight savings time change. So yeah, I mean there are some perks to becoming a channel member. It's an excellent group of people. I've made some real good friends this way. Uh, some of these people are absolute wizards in the things they do. I mean, I'm not looking at you too hard, Michael Bernasconi, but and, or you either, Martin Pearson, but you know who you are. Um, some of the best people I've ever met, and some of the things that they do is absolutely amazing. And we have a private Facebook group and a private live chat, and it's okay. It's really is a good time. John Thompson, Mark, can you show Kimberly how to make a grid with guidelines? Oh, okay. Well, we can try. You just want guidelines. Guidelines. Okay, we can do that. We'll set our first guide right here to this edge. And we'll set our second guide down here to the bottom edge. Now what we want to do, let's say we want 1/2 inch spacing. Okay. I'll click on, you'll see how my arrow turns to the double ended arrows here. Click on that, and I'm going to create new parallel guides relative to this guide. How many guides do I want? Well, I want 1/2 inch, and this is a 16-inch piece of material. That would be 32. So the number, I'll change to 32. Position offset, I want a 1/2 inch to the positive, 0.5, and create new guides. And there's those. Now I'll close that. Now I'll come down here to my horizontal guide and do the same thing. I want to create new parallel guides relative to the guide. It saved my number 32 and position offset. You notice they're both positive. I started on the left and I started on the bottom. That's a positive move. This is going to be a positive move. create new guides, and there's your grid. And you can set that to whatever you want. And that gives you a guideline grid that's a little bit easier to work with and is not proportional like those dots are. But you can set that to anything. Now you've got a bunch of guides in the way, and look at my cursor arrow. It's just going nutso. Let me try to draw a line here. Yeah, it'll let me draw a line. Okay. I didn't know if that cursor was going to interfere with the tools. Nope, it's not interfering with the tools. So there you go. Can you snap a rectangle in there? Sure. Let's put a rectangle right there. As long as you have geometry snapping and smart snapping on. Excuse me. Swig of coffee. No, that's good. As long as you have, come on, get over here. As long as you have geometry snapping and smart snapping on, you can snap just about anything to anything. Let me draw another rectangle. Go like so. Close. Now I want to move this rectangle relative to here. Line it up with this rectangle here. So I'll grab this corner, drag it down to kind of wake up that corner. Then I'm going to lift it straight up. And it'll stay perfectly in line with this one. So many grid lines make viewing confusing. Yes, it does. So how do you turn that off so I can see what I'm doing? This corner is a button right here. Click, turn it off. Click, turn it right back on. Okay? Turn it off, turn it on. Now, if you are done, you don't need these grid lines anymore, you can go through and you can delete them one by one. Or you can come up here to the View menu, come down here to Guidelines, delete all guides. Now, you also have Lock all existing guides. Now, what this does, you see how they kind of grayed out? They're still there, but they can't be changed. Even though I got the double arrow, I can't drag it. I can add another guide, but you see how they're locked. Okay. So they can't be moved. But then I can either, if I come down here and I right click, lock or unlock the guide, I'm only locking or unlocking that one particular guide. If I come up here to the View Guidelines, unlock all existing guides. So I can edit them one by one. I just can't do all of that all at one time. So turn that off just for a minute. Can you turn the question mark off that's on the 3D screen? Okay, 3D view, here we come. You mean this question mark down here? No, you can't turn off the question mark. What you can do is toggle prompts. And that's going to give you this prompt down here. Click on an object to select, click again to transform, hold shift, all that other stuff. I don't want to see that. So you see the eyeball is lit up. I can click on it and now the eyeball has a line. I don't have those. So, but the question mark, no, you can't turn it off. Basically, it's going to show you a selected tools documentation. So, can you confine the grid to the job? I don't understand what you mean by that. The grid, if you mean, can you get rid of all of this out here? No, you can't. No, you can't. Guidelines, and this is the same in most every CAD CAM software I've worked with. It's this way in SketchUp, it's this way in VCarve, it's this way in Aspire. But the guidelines are infinite. They don't have a start and stop point. They are infinite. I mean, I can drag way over here and the guidelines just follow. And that, I think, is a set industry standard. I'm not 100% sure. But no, you can't get rid of this out here. So, Alan Williamson, the Howlin' Hauler, just became a channel member. Thank you very much for joining the members only side. And hope to see you tomorrow evening. I'll get into that a little bit later on in a few minutes here. We have a members only live stream every Monday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Does not have a time limit. We can go an hour. We can go, I think the longest one we've done so far has been almost 4 hours. That was when I had Laney Shaughnessy on, and he is long of wind, even longer than I am. So check my community tab. You'll find a link to tomorrow evening's live stream. And you will also find my email address. Shoot me an email, and we'll get you hooked up to the Facebook group if you're on Facebook. And okay, you win. Welcome aboard. You're in good company, believe me. So remember, you're in the UK. Well, Martin Pearson, who is in Scotland, you have a kindred spirit there. All of the members only live streams are available after we're finished live. You'll see them on the live tab on my YouTube channel. So they're there for you to review if you want to. We've got a lot of good information on those. I've had some good guests. I'm trying to get a couple more. It's just scheduling is being a son of a gun. I'll put it nicely. But thank you for joining, and I do appreciate you. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because it looks like I'm out of questions. If let's see, John's asking, Mark, couldn't Kim make a grid with vector lines, give them a color, then design in another color to confine to a certain size area? Certainly, Kim could do that. Let's get into that. Thank you for saving the day there, John. Let's go here to the view, and we'll delete all guides. And I'm going to get rid of these. So, boom. To do that, what we'll do is basically the same thing we did with the guideline, or with the guidelines. We'll start over here on the left, and I'll make a vertical line right there. And I will spacebar to accept. Then I'll start down here on this corner and make a line down here. Spacebar. Close. And now it's just a matter of doing linear arrays. So I've got my one here highlighted. I will create a linear array copy toolpath. Now, here I'm moving in Y. So I want, again, say 1/2 inch spacing. I will want 32 rows in Y, 1 column in X. I don't want them to go that way at all. And I'm going to offset them 0.5. That's my spacing. Or not offset. Okay? Offset. I don't want to group them just yet. Copy. And there are the guide. Nope. Looks like I need 33. Control Z. I forgot. That counts as number 1. So I need 33 to get a complete grid. Copy. And there we go. I have a beginning and I have an end. All right. Now, click off to deselect. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click this one. And I'm going to use the same settings, except I want 1 row in Y and 33 columns in X. Same offset. It's not going to let me do it. What am I doing here? Columns, offset. Why won't you let me do an offset? Huh? Okay, let's try a gap. Oh, here's the reason. I want 0 here. What am I thinking, Mark? There we go. I didn't change my direction down here. And copy, close. Now, to somebody else's point here, what we'll do is Control A to select all. And I'm going to right click, move to layer, new layer. And I'm going to call this grid. And let's make it a light blue so that it doesn't distract. And I'll make it visible, but I won't make it active right now. We'll click OK. Now, if I click off, my grid is a light blue color. I can work with it. It's not the same color as any vectors I draw on my active layer. And if it's a distraction, I can turn it off. Now, this, and here's a little tip for you, Kimberly. Okay. I could select this and save as, well, I don't have to save that. Excuse me. I don't have to select that. Do a save as, and I'm just going to call it grid. I'll put it on my desktop. Okay. Now I can come over here to my clip art and I can go into local files, look on my desktop, and I don't have a folder set up for it. I need to put it in a folder. Well, heck, let me set up a folder real quick. Bump. New folder, and we'll call it clip art. Boom. Now I'll drop that grid into that folder. Boom. And it's on my desktop. You wouldn't do it this way. Now we'll bring back vcarve. Go into local files, desktop, clip art. And right there is my grid pattern. Now that's in my clip art, and I can bring that up in any other project. Let me do another VCarve Pro, and we'll create a new file. This one I'll make 12 by 12. And go OK. Now I'll go into my clip art, local files. There's my grid. Double click, and I have that grid now in this project. You could also save it as a template. Yes. Can you snap a rectangle to that type of grid? Again, yes, as long as you have geometry and smart stamping turn on. I can come up here. I'm in layer 1. So the color's going to be black, and I can snap right there. And I can, whoops, I forgot to drag instead of just clicking. I can snap right there and snap to there. And where'd my rectangle go? Go from here to there. Close. Am I on? Which layer am I on? Oh, did I put my grid on? Okay, it's there. It was just hiding. I didn't. Well, why the devil is that showing blue? If I turn off the grid, I see them. Might be because I have 2 instances open. That don't make no sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. Try that over here. Snap. There. Snap. There. Snap. There. Close. I don't see my rectangles. If I turn off my grid, I see my rectangles. What is going on? I'll get back to y'all on this. This is confusing me. That makes no sense. Where'd they go? This doesn't overlay. Now, if I select, you know what? I wonder if that has to do with the fact that these are not grouped. Let me make my grid the active layer. Select all of these and group them. I wonder if this has anything to do with that. Nope, still nothing. That makes no sense. Wow. Do you have to change the color for your squares because of the layer you're on? No. The layer that I'm working on, layer 1, the color is black. But I've got both layers visible. Something ain't right. I may have found a bug. Okay. Let's try something here. Let's change the color of my grid to red and see what happens. All right, my active layer is layer 1. My active layer is layer 1. Now I'm going to create a rectangle, snap it right there, close. Now that didn't snap, and I only see 2 vectors. I wonder if this is getting confused about the fact that I have 2 instances of vcarve up. Okay. I wonder. No. Now let's just go back to this. And let's draw a rectangle here. And it's not snapping. Why is it not snapping? It's not snapping. I don't know what's going on. Now I kind of see it. I'm gonna have to get back to you. Have you got it checked in the snapping options? Let's take a look. Edit, snap options, snap to grid. I don't know how the grid turns on. Yes, I've got geometry snapping, object bounds. I don't know why that isn't on. Snapping radius, snap to job center and corners, snap distances, snap to guides, snap guides to geometry. Yeah. May have found us a bug. And I can see it a little bit right there. I'm going to try to get us an answer to this because that would be a serious annoyance. Snap to grid was not checked, John, because snap to grid, snap options. Snap to grid turns on the grid of dots. That's all that does. That's all snap to grid does. It turns on those dots. This is not a real grid. It's a series of vectors. So, yeah, I'll get us an answer. I'll find out why that is, and I'll create a video, a short video, so that they can see what's going on. So, it may be layer order, as Dwayne says. Well, let's find out. Let's find out. Yes, I'm still here. Let's go into the layers tab and change the order there. No, come on. I'm going to move that down and I'll go back into design. And yeah, there you are, Dwayne. That's exactly what it is. I did not know that. It makes perfect sense now that you bring it up. It makes perfect sense that now that you bring it up. But now it's visible. Yeah, that's why you don't do that, Mark. Okay. It was the order. Okay. There. That's what it is. It's the order. So, I think, thank you for bringing that up. And Martin, thank you Thank you for repeating that so that I saw it. I didn't see Dwayne's comment. It kind of moved past before I saw it. All right. So now, when we're talking about 3D models, I make a point to say it it models from the bottom up. So evidently in layers, it applies the layers from the bottom up. So evidently the grid was covering up the vectors I was trying to draw. I had not considered that. That one simple act of moving a layer up or down. And again, you can do that here in the layers tab. Just select which layer you're working that you want to move it up. You can see how they blanked out, or you can move it down and then they came back. Okay, good to know. Something I did not realize. All right. Well, what happens if you lock the grid layer? Let's find out. Layer one, we're going to lock the grid layer. Lock. Boom. Now, I can't change anything about it. I can't select it. Can't make it active. Can I turn it off yet? No. Yes, I can. I can turn it off, but it's locked. I can't make any changes to it. If I unlock it, now I can make changes to it. I can edit it. Okay. I can select it and make changes. But if I lock it, I can't select it. I can't edit it. I can't make any changes. So, all right. Well, thank you for the questions. That's something I was not aware of. And that's what I mean. This community, you folks come up with some good stuff and make me learn through you. And I like that a lot. I really do. I hadn't considered that. And I did not know that that's the way it worked. That it now that it makes perfect sense. But it applies the layers the same way it applies the components in the 3D modeling. So thank you for that. All right. And Rich, I agree with you. That does hurt the eyes. I use gaudy colors so you can see them. You know, personally, I saw somebody say set them to light yellow. Um, and that's probably, I don't know if I'd go that far because I think that would be more intense. But I think there's a lot to that. I think you could make it a light gray that would kind of blend in. But yeah. And yes, you still can snap a rectangle to it if it's locked. All locking it does is make it to where you can't modify that layer. You can't add anything to it. You can't edit it. You can just go, you have to go in and unlock it before you can do that. It when you're trying to say, for instance, well, as Martin says, and this is where I was going with it, um, it stops you from selecting it when you're trying to select something else. If you have, for instance, a bunch of circles arranged on this grid, and these are holes you want to drill, and you want to select all those circles, that'll keep you from selecting your grid at the same time you select those circles by locking it. So, yes. So, all right. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Tomorrow, members, what we're going to do is we're going to do some 3D work. Again, we're going to get into some 3D segmenting. I'm hopefully going to have the perfect file for that. And we're going to do some 3D slicing. If you lock at the position in the layer menu, yes, it still does. All locking does is make it to where you can't edit that layer. That's all that does. Doesn't change anything else. The layer position still matters. We're going to do some 3D model slicing, segmenting, and we'll work a little bit on thicknesses and positions and what have you. Next week, I'm hoping to have a video up. A lot of people have asked about importing a STL file or 3D model in version 12. I'm going to try to get that one done. We'll see. Here's hoping. The problem is not so much the process. The problem is finding a public domain model that I can use without copyright violations and all of that stuff. So that's what the holdup is on that. So hoping I'll have that done next week. Channel members, remember to check the community tab here on my YouTube channel. And some of you are seeing community, some of you are seeing membership. Either or, you click on that and you'll see a link to tomorrow's live stream, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. If you don't know what I'm talking about, or if you'd like some more information on becoming a channel member, down below this, down here, is a join button. Click on that join button. A panel is going to pop up. The video is going to play, tell you all about channel membership. We have a great crew. We'd love to have you be a part of it. Please hit the like button as you exit the theater. Tip your waitress. And we'll see you all next week. Members, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for spending part of your Sunday with me. Y'all take care.